but their cable companies, as powerful as they are finding they have to compete for viewers. They have to compete with people like Netflix and folks like that. The bad news on this front is that our part of the business, the broadcast industry, we individually, as individual organizations, cover even smaller territories, and our whole business, vis-a-vis the cable folks and everything, is built around regulatory infrastructure that was built for a very local broadcast era. And that's great, and it works really well, but a lot of what's going on in the industry is undermining the power of that position. So the transmitter is great, and it's important, and of course it's how we reach 100% of the population. And I saw a stat yesterday, which I couldn't find this morning again, about how broadcast television is disproportionately used by lower income folks. It seems logical, but there was another stat that was released yesterday on that front. So, you know, how you reach the whole audience, but of course the leverage onto cable through must carry and through that regulatory structure is great and powerful and potent, and it may get undermined by a lot of this. A few other philosophical comments. Hey, the NewsHour beats CNN and MSNBC in news every night. Let's remember that. As much buzz as they get, we beat them soundly every night. Bad news, we may be losing to Angry Birds. So, you know, again, in the traditional measures of our business, everything's going really well. Not really well, everything's going well. We're doing our job, everything, you know, things are moving forward. But there are just lots of things out there that are set to change. A few more comments on philosophy, and we'll get into some practical things. The classic agnostic technology trends, I talked about Moore's Law before, processing, storage, and connectivity. So those things, as they have matured and evolved, have enabled all the devices. I can't go out of the house without many things in my hands anymore. But all of these devices are evolving incredibly rapidly based on increased processing power, increased storage, increased connectivity. And you're getting new varieties of devices and new experiences because of changes in batteries, changes in displays and what you can do with the display, partly because they are getting lower and lower power. So you can make a device like the iPad. You couldn't have made the iPad 3 years ago or 5 years ago because the displays would have sucked so much power that no size battery could have powered it for the period of time you needed to power it. Now you get lower powered displays that are still bright and still usable, and better batteries, and now you can make a device that you can take on a cross-country flight and watch an HD movie, and it's a great experience, right?
To throw another point in there too, that the other part of it is a critical mass in production for the displays as well. Is that a few years ago the difficulty was that a lot of the total amount of display panels that were being produced were not yet at the point where we sort of tipped everything economically, and it really is that way now. That the total amount of displays that are being produced at this point are really driving the individual cost way down. So it's a whole lot easier for you to make a device at this point that has a very high quality display.
And their next generation of displays that will come out based on organic LED technology will be lighter, smaller, cheaper to manufacture, use less battery, and they'll still look fabulous. In fact, they'll look better than this generation. And input devices and methodologies. How many of you have a Wii at home, or know somebody who has a Wii at home? How many of you have seen all the buzz about Microsoft's Kinect UI device, right? So turning your body into the input device. All of those things are changing the way you can make a show, and make, you know, the way you can make a product. And all of those are going to drive pretty enormous trends.
How many of you see the computer systems that anybody on episodic dramatic television, network television, use every day? I mean, and my kids always say to me when they look at them is that I want one of those. You know, give me a computer system where I can move things around.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting, you know, so there, that Minority Report user interface, right? So if you saw the movie Minority Report, which is 5 years old or something like that.
It was CSI.
Yeah, if you, well, that's what I was going to say. So first it was in a major motion picture that cost hundreds of millions of dollars and required special effects that, you know, went with that kind of a picture. Now it's in every television show, and pretty soon it's in your home, right? Because Microsoft will take that Kinect device, connect it to your PC, and now you'll be gesturing at your PC trying to send email. It may be a good experience, it may not be. But it gives you an idea of the possibilities. And so the technology is going to enable almost anything you can imagine. All the stuff you can imagine out of sci-fi is going to be possible through all these technology changes. The real question is, what do consumers want to watch and experience, and how do we have a relationship with them and connect with them so that what we're doing is relevant? The content is still what it's all about, and we've got to keep coming back to that. On these technological fronts, I would argue, and you might disagree with me on some of
I'm
this,
going
but
to, yeah.
good, okay, that's fine. I would argue we're very close to infinity. That is, we are very close to having enough processing power, enough connectivity to our home, a fast enough internet connection, and enough storage that people like us can start to make products and devices that make this all transparent. That basically I can get my stuff, my content, my books, my TV, my whatever, where I want, when I want, on whatever screen I've got convenient to me. And we can have this sort of continuous experience of media and entertainment and information that follows us where we go, and that is just really super easy. And I believe that if you look at that, so my argument is all this underlying technology stuff is fine and interesting, but that's where we're headed, right? We're headed to that place where every show is a multi-platform experience. So yes, there's a linear video, but there's also a website and interactivity, and there might be social media around it, and there might be games around it, and there might be some very personal aspects to how I interact with that show, and I can experience that show anytime, any place, on any screen that I've got, or any screen I can get access to. And I don't think we're very far from that at all. So to me, that's where the technology reaches infinity. So you want to argue with that?
Well, the one point that I bring in for because I don't have any disagreement with the figures that Eric's put on the slide, but as far as what's available at home, I mean, with the internet service that I have at home, I can get 50 megabits of service on a fairly regular basis. But the thing that we have to keep in mind is how real is that for what percentage of the population out there, and it actually the FCC's I think the most recent stats that are on their website are probably from the survey a year ago, but they're looking at somewhere about 55% of the population out there having 3 megabits or less of connectivity at home. And I think that most of us, with the audiences that we deal with as well, we'll probably find out that the reality is that it's probably even much lower than that for a lot of people. So the question comes down for the tough decisions that you have to make for what you're doing is what's your sweet spot. And I know that for APT, and we're working quite a bit with the folks at PBS Interactive as well, and have been for a long time, and looking at how Cove is working out and rolling out, and what we're interested in doing as well. The sweet spot of this for streaming is probably somewhere around 500 to 700 kilobits a second for a stream, because you still want to be able to deliver your content and have it be there without excess buffering for an awful lot of the audience. So the question is, these numbers are only going to keep on going up again, and then looking at this is that the availability of the bandwidth, I think, is only going to increase. The question is really going to be is how affordable is it? And that goes back to one of the core things that we have here about a ubiquitous service and about a universal service. So what happens when you have a certain part of your audience that you might be cutting out if you have a service that requires too much bandwidth or a high enough bandwidth? And that gets into some of the complication about how you actually provide services at different bandwidths for different devices. It's still a complicated world out there for that. Although, again, over time, that's only going to keep on increasing and changing.
Jeff, I think you were saying when we were talking about this that you guys still have a very low bit rate service.
Yeah,
right, you offer.
Well, you know, in Idaho, with a lot of small towns across the nation, there's dial-up, and that's it. So our lowest is 56K. We still hit the modem, but even you know, 1.5 would be probably the minimum, you know, that the phone folks deliver, which is Cove. I mean, that's right. What Cove can hit. So, but there's still a lot of hollers and valleys that don't get anything more than that, which may be introduction of the broadband plan and somewhere in there.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But at a technological level, we're definitely, I think, very close to infinity in some places if you can afford it and if you can get it to your house.
Right. Sure.
This is actually a slide that Rob Bull was going to talk about. But since he's not here, I'll give it a stab and hopefully I won't brutalize it too much. at the end of the day, this is about consumers. At the end of the day, we are in a business that we are competing for eyeballs, we're competing for people's attention, we're competing for mind share, right? These days, a helpful word. And so, first thing you got to do is they've got to be able to find you. You've got to have reach. You've got to be, in all the search engines. You've got to be well placed on the channel lineup or in the interactive program guide. We've got to be able to find the programming, because if people can't find your product, they can't try it. Right? So getting out there, and to me, there's also an element of this whole reach question that's about marketing. We have to figure out how to market ourselves so that people, open up, pay attention, and say, "Oh, I need to learn more about that." I was reading some reviews the other day of the new Masterpiece that is just starting to air, and the TV reviewers are going gaga over this thing. Right? It's phenomenal. This is great television. This may be the best thing on television this season. Okay, well, if it gets written up in one place, which is the TV column at the back of the local newspaper, which is, by the way, not doing too well either, then the people that need to hear that message aren't hearing it, right? So we've got to, and this is a collective problem at a national level and a local level, got to figure out how to get the word out, how to make the product findable, so that then people can try it. So once I try it, once I say, "Gee, that sounds interesting, let me click on my remote or click on my computer and find out more," now we've got the person to try public television or a show or your station or whatever it is that they came to try. What are the ways that we provide that suck them in then, that personalize it, that connect us to them? And I'm going to come back to that theme a little bit later on. And get them into the content, get them engaged with the experience. If it's a community and local kind of issue, that make it relevant and important and all of that. And then, what are the things that stick it to them permanently? So you got to get them to be aware, then you got to get them to try the product, and then you got to get them to say, "Wow, I want that, and I want it over and over again, and I'm going to come back to this place as a habit." Because that stick part of it is the valuable part in the long run. And by the way, for those of you that have been around marketing, there's very traditional marketing funnels that this mirrors. This is just kind of a media version of that. Yeah. Okay. So that's all nice and theoretical. We wanted to talk about a few companies and a few folks that you ought to watch if you're interested in where this thing is going. So you want to start by talking about Comcast? And NBC?
Sure. I mean, I think an obvious one would be to watch what happens with the fallout of the Comcast-NBC merger. I mean, this could go in any number of different ways. I'm going to mention I'm going to tip you on one of my predictions before too, but at CES this past week as well, Comcast announced, as well as some other MSOs, about a deal that they have with connected TV manufacturers, particularly with Comcast, I believe it's Samsung and others, to be able to deliver the contents of what they have on the cable systems directly to an internet-connected television device. It's sort of interesting. But when you also take a look at all the other fallout and all the other ripple effect that could happen from the Comcast-NBC merger, it's rather interesting. You did keep your thing in there. Is that here comes Cabletown, for those of you who watch 30 Rock. The idea that, of course, it's a megalith at this point, but it also is going to be interesting to see how it affects other parts of the business as well.
And I'm actually going to jump down a couple to Microsoft MS Media Room. Because it actually fits with that theme of where Comcast is going. So, Comcast has a deal where they can deliver television directly to a TV over any broadband connection. So remember the slide where Comcast only covers 20% of the population of the country, unless of course I plug my television in an area they don't cover into my internet connection that doesn't come from them and subscribe to a service from them. Now today they won't allow you to do that. In the short term, they will only allow that to happen within their footprint. But in the long run, they will become a national company where they can deliver video to you anywhere.